All right, now we are moving on to item 12.0, new business, which is the first reading of the Lakeside Middle School zoning proposal. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Salters.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm going to put my hands on the remote real quick.
Okay.
Okay, so this evening we are going to be talking about first reading of the Lakeside Middle School attendance lines. As you recall, we were in the process of constructing that school, and it will open in August of the upcoming year. So we're excited about that new facility coming up.
I don't mean to interrupt. Well, I do mean to
You
interrupt,
didn't,
or I
you're
wouldn't interrupt. Just as a reminder, the reason we're doing this in December, we normally go January, February, March. This time we backed it up to December. That is Ms. Price's fault. Ms. Price, would you like to address that for us, please?
It is my fault. I will accept responsibility for that. Obviously, in this market, we want to be as viable as we can. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to teachers as soon as we can, potential candidates. In order to do that in this situation, we kind of need to resolve the matter of who is going to what schools, how many people are going to transfer, what does that look like, and how many openings then do we have at each location. And so, you know, normally in other years, when you start the process in January and move forward, you still had some time in the spring to deal with that after that process was over. But in this market, again, we want to be earlier rather than later. And so we asked if we could potentially start that in December. It helps on two fronts. It helps us get out there and find good candidates, but it also helps the teachers in those schools know, hopefully a little bit sooner, where their home is going to be once we settle the FTE. So thank you for allowing us to do that.
All right. So with that being said, we have done, obviously, rezoning a number of times in the district as we've opened new facilities over the years. And so, you know, we have some rationale that we use when we do that. Obviously, we're trying to use our building infrastructure efficiently as possible, which in this case would be Medellin Middle School and Lakeside Middle School. Those are the affected school buildings, or the Lexington Middle School. We try to minimize the division of subdivisions. I'll point that out to you here shortly as we look at some maps. We'd like to allow for future student growth as much as possible in our permanent facilities. With the way the district is growing, we always try to do that. We do consider traffic patterns for efficient and safe student transportation. And we utilize natural boundaries and major roadways where possible. That makes it easier for folks to look at a map and say, oh, there's the line. It's, you know, 378, or it's Highway 1, or whatever the, you know, the roadway is, or the, you know, particular creek, 14 Mile Creek, or whatever. And then we're obviously looking in this case to balance student enrollment between Lakeside, the former Lexington Middle, and Medellin Middle School. So taking a look at our current attendance lines, we you know, have the current Lexington Middle School in this light green here, and then Medellin in this yellow. And as you recall, we actually started this process a few years ago, and tried to do some work on these lines when we opened Beechwood, but through community feedback, it was decided that it would be better to wait until the new facility opened, and so that's kind of brought us back to this point. We're excited about that. This line here, Old Chapin Road, will not change, and I say that to say that what that means is that the Beechwood Middle School attendance area is not affected. The Pleasant Hill Middle School attendance area is not affected. So the only shuffling, if you will, that's going to occur is between the current Lexington Middle School and the Medellin attendance areas. So you see with 616 approximate enrollment and 1027 there at Medellin. Looking at the proposed boundaries for the new Lakeside Middle School, it's a little hard to see on this map. I'll give you a tool at the end that'll really help you hone in on this. The lower portion of this hasn't changed. And so basically, this is I-20 running through here. We cut up through here, and we get up to 378. It's labeled Sunset Boulevard on this map here. But we start down, really where the line starts to change is right here. We start down Hope Ferry Road, and we come in behind these neighborhoods right in this area here. And this is a good example of where we, in years past, actually tried to, we inadvertently split a neighborhood, and then through feedback, we changed the lines because the neighborhood was actually divided by Hope Ferry Road. We followed 14 Mile Creek through here, and then cut off and across here to get back to Millstream Road, and where Millstream forks off, we pick up Millstream, and then we take a left down Lee Cleckley and head over to Corley Mill Road. And so this area here in the light green would be the new Lakeside attendance area, and then this area to the right would be the Meta Glen attendance area. This would leave approximate enrollments of 852 and 826. And I say approximate because there's a lot that goes into these numbers when you shuffle students. And that's why Ms. Price, and rightly so, wanted to start in December, because when we have grandfathering options that we'll talk about, we have some other choice options that come into play. And so we need to let these enrollments settle out and figure out exactly where these students are going to land over the next few months, so that we can appropriately staff the schools. Talking about the feeder patterns, so at Lakeside, in this proposal, a portion of Lexington Elementary, a portion of New Providence Elementary, and a portion of Midway Elementary would attend Lakeside. Meta Glen Middle School, all of Meta Glen Elementary would attend Meta Glen Middle, and then a portion of Midway and a portion of Oak Grove Elementary School would attend that. In looking at our feeders, and I'll look at the high school pattern. So it's Lakeside is River Bluff as well as Meta Glen. As I said, a number of years ago, we looked at when we did the Beechwood zoning. Actually, we created through that zoning true feeder patterns for our middle and high school, or for our high schools. And so it's really important programmatically for students at the middle school level to matriculate to a common high school and not be split. It's easier to absorb that split when two students are in the elementary school and they go to different middle schools. They're not involved in all the after-school activities, all the extracurricular programs that are offered through the school yet at the elementary level. However, when they get to the middle school level, they get involved in a lot of stuff typically, and a lot of that stuff is tied to a particular high school. So Mr. Calhoun has lived that experience where, you had kids going from one middle school to two high schools. That makes it very challenging to have an identity. And so by making a common feeder at that middle school level, it really gives that identity to those students and connects them with their future high school. So this zoning obviously preserves that, but it does have some splitting that goes on at the elementary level to achieve that. Speaking of grandfathering, for our rising eighth graders, the new attendance lines, any current seventh grader, if it shows that they would be rezoned to Lakeside as a Meta Glen student, they can choose their eighth grade year to go to Meta Glen Middle School. That's also an option for their sibling. If they have, for example, a rising sixth grade sibling that's coming in, they can do that, and that the sibling can stay there with their other sibling, their older sibling. The situation with grandfathering is that parents need to provide transportation To achieve that, there's no special bus routes to be able to run into the other zone and pick those students up and bring them out of zone into that school. A couple other topics that come into play in this situation. The first here is immersion. The Chinese immersion program, we're proposing to remain at Medellin Middle School. And then the the French immersion program to be located at Lakeside Middle School. And then looking at trying to make this decision, a lot of factors went into this, but the primary factor is where the students live and what program they're feeding into. And so 87% of the rising 6th, 7th, and 8th graders live in the Lakeside Middle School attendance area already. So for French. So by far the majority of students that are in that French immersion program are living in that Lakeside attendance zone. And so, that's kind of the biggest driver to move that program to continue that support for those students. Additionally, the rising 8th grade students that are in that French immersion program, we're going to have some parent feedback to have conversations with them about, where their students may land, because they do have the option as a rising 8th grader to grandfather at the school. And so we're going to evaluate that, over the next month or so and come up with a final recommendation, certainly before, final reading is presented to the board. Additionally, another factor related to instructional programs that I wanted to highlight is that Mr. Calhoun will be undertaking the transition to EL education and opening Lakeside Middle School. And some of that work, I believe, has already started at Lexington Middle School. They were an IB school. And so, again, to provide that continuity of instructional program tied to River Bluff High School, which has been a flagship EL school for a long time, they will be working towards that strategy in Lakeside Middle School as well. Some key dates for consideration. Obviously, first reading is tonight. We will have 2 public meetings. One will be hosted at Lexington Middle, and one will be hosted at Medellin Middle. These will be in January 10th and January 12th. They'll be at 6 p.m. We'll do a general presentation at those meetings and then have stations set up for parents to ask specific questions, and obviously we'll be there at the presentation to ask questions. And they will have feedback forms available to provide feedback that we will assimilate and share with the board for your consideration. We'll have second reading at the board meeting in January, and then third and final reading we'd ask for action at the February 15th board meeting. And so I mentioned earlier, it's kind of hard to see this presentation will be available online, but it's kind of hard to see the exact lines. But this website link will be also available. You can go into this link and put in your address, and it will tell you which schools you're zoned for under the new lines. So that'll be available on the website after this evening. So that's the easiest way to figure out where you're zoned. And then with that, I'll happy to ask or answer any questions you have.
Can you remind me of the capacity of Lakeside and Meadow Glen?
Yeah, sure. The initial capacity of Lakeside is 1,000 students. 1,200 students and a core of 1,500. Meadow Glen is 1,000 and 1,200.
Okay.
And the difference in the initial versus the core, I use that term. Initial is, what is the structure built for classroom space wise, and then the core means that the cafeteria structure, the gymnasium, the bathroom facilities, the hallways are wide enough, et cetera, to handle 1,500 students in the case of Lakeside. So if we add portable classrooms, which we have you know, kind of in our plan, we grow schools with portables first and then add additions to them. If we do that, we have the core capacity to handle those, should we grow past that.
I think there's something in the soil that we put around our schools that grows portables outside of them right after they're open. So.
If you can tell me what that is, I'd love to put some Roundup on it. Because I'd rather grow permanent classrooms. Any other questions? Well, we'll have multiple opportunities for feedback. I didn't mention, but we are, Mr. Warren and I will be meeting with the school improvement councils at each school prior to the feedback sessions, and so we're also doing that. So we're really looking for, you know, feedback, and we'll certainly be sharing that with the board and allowing you to have some time for discussion and consideration. Thank you.
And you want to tell them what you're doing tomorrow, Ms. Price? Teachers or staff? Isn't that the 15th of December? I thought I was leading you with a softball. I'm sorry. I thought you
Yes.
knew we were on
Yeah.
the same page there.
It's late, apparently.
Dr. Little,
I
it
am
is 5
sleepy.
after.
It's all right.
So,
I thought we were right on the same page.
Yeah. Tomorrow, today, what day is it? Tomorrow, my staff and I will be going out to both schools and just having an opportunity to share kind of the process with them, you know, what that's going to look like, what they can do if they would like to remain at a certain school or transfer to a certain school. Share kind of, in case they didn't have the opportunity to watch tonight, share some of the big picture information that, you know, about the lines and where that is headed. So we hope, we won't have all the answers for them because that won't happen until we can finalize some of that FTE, but at least give them an idea of what the process looks like and what's to come. So